It's almost 2 in the morning, and you're doing the thing you promised yourself you'd stop doing. Their name is still at the top of a thread you refuse to delete. You've read the last message so many times, the words have gone soft. Underneath the missing and the wanting to text, there is a question you don't quite let yourself say out loud. If you know they were wrong for you, why does it feel like a piece of your own outline walked out the door with them? Perhaps the person you're grieving in the middle of the night isn't really them at all. Take the case of a woman named Elise. 3 weeks after her breakup, she's standing in a record store on a Saturday afternoon, holding a jazz album, completely paralyzed. She's holding this record like a test she forgot to study for. She suddenly cannot remember if she actually likes jazz, or if it was his preference that became their preference, a hobby she adopted so thoroughly she eventually called it her own. The panic rising in her has very little to do with him. It is the sudden vertigo feeling of reaching for her own sense of self and closing her hand around empty space. Elise is standing in the wreckage of a merger, an identity that became so intertwined with someone else that the separation feels like a total collapse. To see how a whole independent person loses track of their basic tastes, we have to look at the mechanics of how we fall in love. Psychologists Arthur and Elaine Aron call this self-expansion. As these two circles move together, their boundaries stretch to pull in new territory. We are drawn to love because it makes us bigger. You absorb pieces of a partner's world, their city, their music, even their way of seeing an ordinary Tuesday. You take their phrases and their habits, and you fold them into your own identity, until the you plus them feels more alive than the person you were before. This process feels like joy. It feels like coming home. Because it happens so naturally, we rarely notice that we are trading our original edges for a shared outline. Love physically and measurably enlarges the boundaries of who you consider yourself to be. While the expansion is slow and joyful, the contraction is violent. That edge that spent years moving outward snaps back in a single conversation, taking your territory with it. The shared friends, the restaurants, the songs you loved, they become landmines. The version of you that only existed in the space between the two of you suddenly has nowhere to live. A 2010 study coined a term for this: reduced self-concept clarity. As the data shows, the person's identity literally becomes foggier and less defined. The researchers found that the severity of a person's suffering was predicted by this internal fog. The more confused a person felt about who they were without the relationship, the harder they struggled to recover. This identity crisis drives the classic post-breakup impulses, the sudden hair color changes, the bedroom redecorating, or the overnight hobbies. These aren't acts of impulsiveness. They're the mind's attempt to physically become someone the relationship never touched, a way of finding your own edges again. This deep suffering is a physical measurement of how much of your identity you folded into another person. Grief tends to airbrush the past. It deletes the nights you spent alone or frustrated and keeps a highlight reel of the perfect mornings on repeat. Idealizing the relationship forces you to bury the memory of the independent, capable person you were before they arrived. You end up mortgaging your own past to make the memory of them feel more golden. This creates the urge to seek closure, the idea that one more explanation or one final text will return what you've lost. But no conversation can return a missing piece of yourself. You are asking the wrong person to return something they never truly possessed. Recall Elise in the record store. A month later, she buys that jazz album as an experiment. She listens to it alone and realizes she finds most of it boring. She actually prefers music with words. That small act of preference, the decision to like one thing and reject another, is the first foundational block of an independent identity going back up. Rebuilding your outline involves dozens of these tiny referendums: texting the friend you ignored, cooking your old favorite meal, listening to your teenage playlist. This work isn't about becoming a new person. It is the process of remembering the original person who survived just fine for years before this relationship began. Blurring the lines of your identity was a way of holding on to a connection, but that merger was always temporary. The self you miss, the one who was specific and brave long before they showed up, was never theirs to take. She is simply waiting for you to come back and get her.